All right, let's get into this story. We're talking about the legend of Công Tử Bạc Liệu, who's known as the Playboy Prince of Bạc Liêu. Now, this isn't just some simple tale about a rich kid who blew through his family's money. No, it's actually this incredible case study in strategy, personal branding, and this massive clash between old school tradition and brand new ideas in colonial Vietnam. And that really brings us to the heart of the mystery, doesn't it? How on earth did this young man, who was famous for living it up, convince his super traditional father that things like dancing, racing cars, and flying planes were not just hobbies, but were the actual future of their massive farming empire? The answer is pretty much a masterclass in persuasion. So before we can even get to our Playboy Prince, you've got to understand where he came from. And to really get the scale of this, you need to know that his family wasn't just rich, they were the absolute, undisputed kings of the Mekong Delta. So what's with this number? 110,000. Well, get this. That's how many hectares of rice paddies were owned by Hoi Dong Trek, our Playboy's father. I mean, that is just a staggering amount of land, and it was the foundation of this unbelievable fortune. I mean, this just shows you the scale we're talking about. His wealth was more than the next 14 biggest landowners combined. His house was so huge and lavish that even the French colonial governors were jealous of it. We're talking about serious, old-world power on a level that's hard to even imagine. But his son, a young man named Ba Hui, he had a totally different idea about what was valuable. He actually argued that the future wasn't just about land, it was about knowledge. And he sold his father on a trip to Paris with this killer line right here, framing it not as a vacation, but as a long-term investment. And just like that, the generational battle lines were drawn. And unbelievably, his dad agrees. He sends him off to Paris for a few years. But the guy who comes back, wow, he is nothing like the son who left. He is basically a walking, talking symbol of the modern world, and he's about to shake everything up. Just try to picture this scene at the port. This massive steamship, the Aramis, pulls in, and walking down the gangplank is Ba Hui. He is decked out, head to toe, in the absolute latest Parisian fashion. He looks less like a farmer's son and more like a movie star. Right from that first moment, he was making a huge statement. And his 300-kilometer trip home, oh man, it was the perfect showcase for his new skills. First, his dad walks into a dealership and buys a new Chevy by plopping a giant sack of cash on the counter, which completely blows the French salesman's minds. Then Ba Hui just waves off the professional driver they hired and says, "Nope, I'm driving." And the real kicker? On the way home, he gets into a street race with this notoriously crazy bus driver and wins. His dad was in the car, totally terrified, but also secretly impressed. And it wasn't just about cars and racing. The culture shock went way deeper. You know, he had to explain this whole new set of rules to his family. And in this famous conversation, he pointed out this hilarious little flip. In France, you kiss in public, but you pee in private. In Vietnam at the time, it was the complete opposite. It's a funny little detail that just perfectly shows the massive cultural gap he was trying to bridge. Okay, so right now you're probably thinking, I get it. Rich kid, fast cars, fancy clothes, a few funny ideas from Europe. But this is where the story takes a fascinating turn. This is the moment he reveals that all those seemingly silly hobbies are actually part of a much bigger, much smarter business plan. You can just imagine, his family is freaking out a little bit. They see all the partying, the driving, the dancing, and they just see money going down the drain. Finally, his father confronts him and basically says, "I thought you were just wasting your time over there." But Ba Hui, he was ready for this. And this is where his genius really shines. He takes every single one of their criticisms and just flips it on its head. He says dancing wasn't just for fun. It was how he learned the social skills and diplomacy to build relationships with powerful French officials. And racing cars? That wasn't just for thrills. That was hands-on training in mechanics, which was absolutely essential for fixing the modern farm equipment they'd need. And flying? Well, flying was the entire future of their business. This was the masterstroke. He laid out this vision, using a small two-seater airplane, just like the ones he'd learned on in France, to fly over their huge rice paddies. They could use it to survey the land and, even better, to spray for pests from the air. For Vietnam at that time, this idea was absolutely revolutionary. His dad, who started out skeptical, was totally sold. He agreed to buy him a plane. So he's got the tech, he's got his dad on board, but Bakui was smart. He knew that wasn't enough to really secure the family's future. He needed to manage their image, their reputation. So what did he do? He threw a party. But this was no ordinary party. It was a brilliantly executed PR event. The real genius of this party was the guest list. I mean, look at this. It was a who's who of colonial society. He got the old school Vietnamese landowners, the old power, in the same room as the high-ranking French officials, the new power. He brought in famous dancers from Saigon to give it some modern flair, and crucially, he invited the Fourth Estate, journalists from all the big city papers. And check this out, he didn't just invite the press. He knew exactly how to handle them. He gave them this poetic, flattering nickname, the Knights of the Pen. It shows this incredibly modern and savvy understanding of how important the media was. He knew they were the ones who would write the story, who would define his family's reputation for a whole new generation. And the party itself? Wow, it was a total sensation. It was like a cultural bomb went off in the middle of rural Bạc Liêu. He had a brand new record player shipped in, playing all the latest music from Europe, and he got everyone, the French and the Vietnamese, dancing together all night long. It was basically a declaration that the future was here, and his family was leading the charge. So when you look back at all of this, the racing, the planes, the legendary parties, the big question is still there. Who was this guy really? Was he just a lucky, charming rich kid who liked to have fun? Or was there a real pioneer underneath it all? Let's just break it down. You can look at him as the playboy, of course. He spent a ton of money, threw wild parties, and seemed to thumb his nose at tradition. But then there's the other side, the pioneer. This is the guy who completely understood social networking, who saw how technology could revolutionize their business, and who brilliantly used his own personal brand to lift his family's status in a world that was changing fast. And that leaves us with this final thought. Was his life just a cautionary tale about living too large? Or was it something way more clever? A masterclass in how to take a fortune built on something as old as rice and transform it to not just survive, but to lead.